Thanks for staying with us. I'm Bill O'Reilly in the Weekdays with Bernie segment tonight. Last week, the House Ways and Means Committee heard riveting testimony from the leaders of 6 conservative groups who allege they were targeted by the IRS, and that scrutiny hurt both them and their organizations. The Factor covered the story fairly and extensively, but not everybody emulated us. ABC News and CNN Primetime didn't cover the hearings at all. Nothing about them. CBS Evening and the CBS Morning News gave the hearings 3 minutes total. And NBC Nightly News and the Today Show also gave the hearings 3 minutes. That's a minuscule amount of time. Joining us now from Asheville, North Carolina, the purveyor of BernardGoldberg.com, Mr. Goldberg. So even with the left-leaning national television media, I was surprised ABC and CNN in prime time didn't cover the story at all.
Right. Did
they forget, or what do you think?
Yeah. Listen, I think there are just a couple of things that we should all be able to agree upon, whether we're liberals or conservatives or Democrats or Republicans. One of them is that in a free country, the main role of the press is to keep an eye on government, especially to keep an eye on the abuses of government. That's why the press has constitutional protections. And the second point we all ought to be able to agree on is that when Americans testify before the United States Congress about abuses of the IRS, that's a legitimate news story. Yet, television, where most Americans get their news, either, as you correctly say, ignored the story entirely or played it way, way down and gave it only a few minutes. I think it's a safe bet, Bill, that if we had a Republican in the White House,
it would have been Armageddon.
They would have been all over it. But there's one thing I don't understand. It is said often that President Obama doesn't like the media, doesn't like the press. I can't figure this out. If they were doing their job honestly, if they were covering this honestly and Benghazi honestly, his approval ratings would be at least 20 points lower than they are.
So he should be happy the press likes him so much. You know, man, ABC News, that confuses me. Brian Ross, very aggressive investigative reporter, done fine work in uncovering government abuse. All right? Diane Sawyer doesn't seem to be a far left, agenda-driven person. And they don't cover it at all.
This is a great. You're making a great point, Bill. I would have said, even if you didn't say that, ABC News is the worst. Shame on Diane Sawyer. She is an intelligent person. She used to work at CBS. I knew her there. She's an intelligent journalist. They had time the night of the testimony before Congress to run a story about window washers dressing up as superheroes to entertain kids in a hospital. I am not against that kind of story, but not at the expense of something as important as Americans testifying about the IRS abuses.
Yeah, I don't get it at all.
I don't know if what's going on there is political or simply that they're going light. But it's shame on ABC is the worst of all of them, as far as I'm concerned.
Well, they know better.
That's right.
So far, you've been listening to the Factor tonight, right?
Yeah,
you covered this NSA thing fairly. We've been fair here. Laid it out there?
You know why you've been fair? Because the nuances of all sides have been covered. Let me give you my take on this quickly. I care about civil liberties. I guess I should be more concerned about the U.S. government snooping on so many Americans. But I'm going to be honest with you, Bill. I'm not. I'm not concerned, not right now anyway. When I hear, as I've heard on TV, people saying we live in a police state, you and I have covered stories in police states. This is not a police state. Going after terrorists is not the same as going after litter bugs. So we have to weigh privacy versus security. And when President Obama says this is about trust, he's absolutely right. But that's precisely the problem. And you've touched on this during the program. Trust is precisely the problem. When you have the IRS going after Americans because of their political beliefs, when you have high-ranking government officials misleading Americans about Benghazi, when you have Eric Holder under oath at absolute least misleading Congress about, when he went after James Rosen, when I have more confidence in the veracity of the World Wrestling Federation than I do in this federal government. Then Americans have a right to wonder, despite what they're doing today, where it may all lead. That's the problem.
Well, and there's a bigger problem, though. When you see a guy like Rosen, all right, targeted in a very, very specific way by the Attorney General, who's put his name on a document that said, you know what? James Rosen may be a co-conspirator in a security leak and is a flight risk. This is the Attorney General putting his name on this kind of a ridiculous document. All right. And now we have allegations that emails from private citizens are being accumulated and are going to be dumped in Utah so some 29-year-old kid can sort through it and send whatever he wants to Aunt Mabel. So that's pretty frightening.
Here's the two sides of that. On the one hand, I'm not worried about that today. I'm not. Maybe I should be, but I'm not. On the other hand, when you have, as you correctly say, the Attorney General doing what he's doing and all the other mischief and half-truths that are going around, yeah, I don't think somebody's paranoid because they say, if this government can go after Americans for their political beliefs and the part of the government is the Internal Revenue Service, yeah, they have a right to be concerned about what might happen.
And not only the IRS, and the Attorney General. So we got to get, we have to know what they're doing, and that's what we have. The Congress has got to get them in there, and they got to specifically say what he's doing.
I'm not worried today, but I understand why people may be worried about what's going to happen tomorrow.
Bernie, thank you. Miller's on deck. Spying, Muslims objecting to bikinis, and Miller's trip to London. All when we come back.